There is a silence that exists in an empty house. It's a different kind of quiet. It's not peaceful. It's heavy. It's the sound of memories that have nowhere to go. I sit here now, in my small living room, and that is the only sound I hear. The clock on the wall ticks, each second a reminder of the time that has passed. The time before everything changed. People say that a house holds the echoes of the lives lived within it. I believe that now. I can still hear the echo of my son's laughter from when he was a boy. I can hear the pitter-patter of his small feet running down this very hallway. I can feel the ghost of his small hand in mine. But that was a long, long time ago. Those echoes are all I have left. The present is this silence. It all came to a head on a Sunday. Isn't it always a Sunday? The day of rest, of family dinners, of togetherness. For me, it became the day of the great unraveling. The day the thread that bound my son and me finally snapped. I remember the light that morning was beautiful. It streamed through the kitchen window, landing on the table where I was setting out the china. My good china. The set with the little blue flowers around the rim that my own mother gave me. I only used it for special occasions. And that day felt special. My son, David, and his wife, Chloe, were coming for lunch. And they were bringing my grandson, Leo. My little lion. Just 3 years old, with a laugh that could light up the darkest room. I had spent all morning cooking. The air was thick with the smell of roasted chicken and herbs. I had made David's favorite potato dish, the one with the crispy cheese on top. I had baked a lemon cake, his favorite dessert since he was 10 years old. My heart was so full. It felt like preparing for a celebration. I fussed over the details. Were the napkins folded right? Was the lemonade cold enough? I wanted everything to be perfect. For them. Always for them. I looked around my home, our home, and I felt a deep sense of contentment. This was what life was about. These moments of connection. These threads of love that tied us together. When the doorbell rang, my heart did a little flip of joy. I wiped my hands on my apron and hurried to the door. I opened it, and there they were. David, my handsome son, looking so much like his father it sometimes took my breath away. Chloe, elegant and smiling, holding a bottle of wine. And Leo, hiding behind his father's legs, peeking out with his big, curious eyes. Grandma, he squealed, and that one word was the most beautiful music to me. I scooped him up into my arms, breathing in his little boy scent of sunshine and cookies. He felt so solid, so real. A piece of my David, a piece of me. We settled in the living room. Leo immediately went for the toy box I kept for him in the corner. The same box that once held David's toys. David looked around, a pleasant smile on his face. The house looks great, Mom. It was a kind thing to say. But there was a distance in his eyes. A distance I had been noticing more and more over the past year. It was as if he was looking at my life from across a wide river, and he had no intention of building a bridge. I pushed the thought away. I was being silly. This was my son. My David. Lunch was pleasant. We talked about their work, about Leo's new preschool, about the neighbors. The conversation skimmed the surface of life. It was like we were all following a script, saying the lines we were supposed to say. This potato dish is delicious, Mom, David said, taking a second helping. My heart swelled. Some things never change, I thought. But then, as we were finishing the lemon cake, Chloe cleared her throat softly. She placed her fork down neatly on her plate. She looked at David, a silent message passing between them. David nodded, almost imperceptibly. And I knew, with a cold certainty that settled in the pit of my stomach, that this was not a casual Sunday lunch after all. Mom, David began, his voice careful, measured. There's something we wanted to talk to you about. Leo was chattering to himself, pushing a piece of cake around his plate. The clock ticked. I put my own fork down, my hand suddenly feeling weak. I folded my hands in my lap to keep them from shaking. I looked at my son, trying to find the little boy who used to climb into my lap with his scraped knees and endless questions. But I saw a man. A man with a new family. A man who was about to break his mother's heart. We've been thinking, he continued, not quite meeting my eyes. With Leo getting bigger, and my job being so demanding, we need more space. He paused, letting the words hang in the air. Space. It was such a simple word. But it felt so heavy. Chloe reached over and placed her hand on top of his. A united front. We found a wonderful house, as she said, her voice bright and efficient. It's in Oak Ridge. It has a huge backyard for Leo, and the schools there are just fantastic. Oak Ridge. The name landed like a stone in my chest. Oak Ridge was over 2 hours away. 2 hours. With traffic, it could be 3. It wasn't a weekend trip. It was a journey. My mind raced. I wouldn't be able to babysit Leo last minute. I wouldn't be able to come over for a quick cup of tea. I wouldn't be there for his school plays, his soccer games. The distance felt like a chasm opening up between my present and my future. A future where I was on the other side of that chasm, looking in. I tried to keep my voice steady. Oak Ridge? That's quite far away, David. He finally looked at me, and his eyes held a mixture of guilt and resolve. I know, Mom. But it's a great opportunity for us. For our family. He stressed the words our family. And in that moment, I understood. I was not part of that hour. I was separate. I was the past. They were the future. The silence in the room was no longer just the quiet of an old house. It was the sound of my heart cracking, a fine, hairline fracture that I knew would never truly heal. I forced a smile. It was the hardest thing I have ever done. I looked at my son, the center of my universe for so many years, and I smiled. Well, I said, my voice barely a whisper. That sounds wonderful. I asked about the house, about the number of bedrooms, about the price. I asked all the practical questions a mother should ask. But inside, I was crumbling. The roasted chicken and lemon cake felt like a lead weight in my stomach. This was the day. The day my son chose his new family over me. And he did it sitting at my table, eating the food I had made with so much love. The love that was, apparently, no longer enough to keep him close. To understand the depth of that Sunday, you have to understand the depth of what came before. You have to know about David. My David. He was not just my son, he was my miracle. After years of hoping, of praying, of facing disappointment, he arrived. I remember the first time I held him in my arms. He was so small, so perfect. He had a tuft of dark hair and eyes that seemed to hold all the wisdom of the world. I promised him in that moment, whispering into his tiny, shell-like ear, that I would always be there for him. I would protect him, love him, and guide him. He was my purpose. His father, my Michael, was a good man. A kind man. He worked hard as an engineer, and he loved us both dearly. But his heart was weak, a fact we discovered too late. When David was only 12, Michael passed away in his sleep. It was a loss that hollowed me out. The world lost its color for a long, long time. The only thing that kept me going was the small, grieving boy who needed his mother more than ever. I looked at David, who had his father's eyes and his father's quiet strength, and I knew I had to be strong for both of us. We became a team, David and I. We navigated the difficult years of his adolescence together. I worked 2 jobs to keep us in our home, to put food on the table, to save for his college fund. There were tough times. Times when the bills piled higher than my paycheck. Times when David would come home from school, sad because he missed his dad. But we had each other. We would sit at this very kitchen table, and I would help him with his homework. We would talk about his dreams. He wanted to be an architect. He loved drawing buildings, creating worlds from lines on paper. I remember one night, he was working on a model for a school project. It was late, and he was frustrated. The glue wasn't holding, the pieces were warped. He put his head in his hands and said, "I can't do this, Mom." I sat down beside him. I didn't fix it for him. I just said, one piece at a time, David. Just focus on one piece at a time. You can do this. He looked at me, took a deep breath, and went back to work. He finished that model, and it was beautiful. It was a lesson for both of us. We learned to face life one piece at a time. He got into a good university. The day I dropped him off at his dorm was one of the proudest and hardest days of my life. The campus was bustling with young people, with their futures stretched out before them like open roads. His dorm room was small and impersonal. We unpacked his boxes together, making his bed, putting his books on the shelf. I tried to memorize his face, the new stubble on his chin, the confident way he carried himself. He was no longer my little boy. When it was time for me to leave, I hugged him tight. "I love you, Mom," he said, his voice a little thick. "I'll call you every Sunday." And he did. For 4 years, without fail, he called me every single Sunday. Those calls were my anchor. He met Chloe in his final year of university. He brought her home for a weekend, and I cooked a big dinner, just like I always did. She was lovely. Polished, intelligent, and ambitious. She came from a different world than ours. Her parents were lawyers. They lived in a big, modern house in the city. She was kind to me, but I always felt a subtle wall there. A politeness that never quite warmed into familiarity. She called me a Margaret, which was fine, of course, but I missed the sound of a mom from another woman's voice. I could see how much David loved her. His eyes lit up when she walked into a room. He hung on her every word. He was captivated. And I was happy for him. Truly, I was. Every mother's deepest wish is to see her child find love, find happiness. I just hadn't realized that his happiness might mean a life that slowly edged me out. After they graduated, they moved in together in the city. They got good jobs. Life was moving forward, as it does. Then, he proposed. It was a beautiful, elaborate proposal in a park, with photographs and everything. He called me right after, his voice bursting with joy. "She said yes, Mom." I cried happy tears for him. I truly did. The wedding planning began, and I tried to be involved. I offered to help with the guest list, with the seating chart. But Chloe had it all under control. Her mother and she had a vision, a planner, a specific aesthetic. I felt like an extra, a guest star in the story of my own son's wedding. I was asked for my opinion on things, but my opinion never seemed to carry much weight. It was their day, I told myself. It was supposed to be about them. The wedding itself was beautiful. It was held at a sleek, modern art gallery. I wore a pale lavender dress, the mother of the groom. I remember sitting in the front row, watching my son stand at the altar, looking so handsome in his tuxedo. My heart was so full it ached. When he saw Chloe walking down the aisle, the look on his face was one of pure adoration. It was the look I had always dreamed for him. I smiled through the entire ceremony. But when the minister said, "Who gives this man to be married to this woman?" there was a pause. I was supposed to stand, as his only living parent. But in that moment, I felt a profound sense of loss. I was giving him away. I was officially passing the torch. I stood, my legs feeling weak, and said, "His family and I do." It was the truth, but it felt like a lie. It was just me. It had always been just me. At the reception, I gave a speech. I had practiced it for weeks. I talked about David as a little boy, about his kind heart, about how proud his father would have been. I welcomed Chloe to our family. People laughed in the right places, and they clapped when I was done. David hugged me and said it was perfect. But for the rest of the night, I felt like a ghost at the feast. The music was too loud, the conversations were about things I didn't understand. I saw the easy way Chloe's family mingled with David, the inside jokes, the comfortable embraces. I felt like I was on the outside, looking through a window at a party I wasn't quite invited to. After the wedding, things began to change slowly, almost imperceptibly. The Sunday phone calls became less frequent. Sometimes it would be a quick text instead. "Hey Mom, super busy this week, talk to you soon." Soon could be 2 weeks. Our visits became more scheduled, less spontaneous. They were busy building their life, their careers. I understood. I really did. I tried not to be the clingy mother. I had my own life, my friends, my garden, my book club. But David was my son, and my world felt a little dimmer, a little colder, with his light so far away. Then, Leo was born. Oh, the joy he brought. When David called me from the hospital to tell me I was a grandmother, I wept with pure, unadulterated happiness. I drove to the hospital immediately. I held that tiny, swaddled baby in my arms, and I felt a surge of love so powerful it took my breath away. It was like holding David all over again. I looked at my son, now a father himself, and I saw the same wonder in his eyes that I'm sure was in mine all those years ago. "He looks like you, Mom," David said, touching Leo's cheek. In that moment, all the distance, all the slight hurts, melted away. We were a family again, bound by this new, perfect little life. I offered to help as much as they would let me. I would go over and watch Leo so Chloe could rest. I would cook meals for them to freeze. For a little while, it felt like I had a purpose again. I was grandma. I was needed. But as Leo grew older and Chloe went back to work, they hired a nanny. A professional. The visits became more structured. I had to schedule time with my own grandson. It felt strange, but I accepted it. This was their way. This was how modern families worked. I didn't want to be a burden. I just wanted to be a part of their lives. I held onto those moments with Leo, storing them up like treasures for the long, quiet days in between. He was the new thread connecting me to my son. I just didn't know how fragile that thread would turn out to be. The first real crack, the one I could no longer ignore, appeared on a Tuesday. It was Leo's 3rd birthday party. They were having it at a big, indoor play center, a place full of colorful ball pits and winding slides. I was so excited. I had bought him a special gift, a wooden train set that David had loved when he was little. I had saved it all these years, hoping one day I could give it to my grandchild. I arrived a little early, wanting to help set up. The party was in a private room decorated with balloons and a banner that said a happy birthday, Leo. Chloe was there, directing the staff where to put the food and the cake. She looked stressed. "Oh, Margaret, hello," as she said, giving me a quick, distracted hug. "You can just put your gift on the table over there." I did as I was told. I saw the pile of gifts. They were all large, shiny, modern toys. My simple wooden train set in its worn box looked out of place. A relic from another time. The guests started to arrive. It was mostly other young parents and their children, colleagues from David and Chloe's work. They were all dressed in stylish, casual clothes. I had worn my best slacks and a nice blouse, but I suddenly felt frumpy and old-fashioned. I stood near the food table, smiling, trying to look involved. David was busy running after Leo, making sure he was having fun. He gave me a wave and a smile, but he was pulled in a dozen different directions. At one point, I saw Leo heading for a slide that was a little too tall for him. Instinct took over. I hurried over and gently took his hand. "Let's try the smaller one first, sweetheart," I said softly. Just then, Chloe appeared. She swooped in and picked Leo up. "It's okay, Leo, you can do the big one. You're a big boy," she said, her voice bright and encouraging. She then turned to me, her smile tight. Margaret, we're trying to encourage his independence. It's best not to intervene. She didn't say it unkindly. She said it like she was stating a fact. A parenting fact. But it felt like a reprimand. It felt like she was telling me that my instincts, my grandmotherly love, were wrong. I just nodded and took a step back. I felt myself shrinking. During the cake cutting, I stood at the back of the crowd, taking pictures with the camera I had specially bought for these moments. David was helping Leo blow out the candles. Chloe was beside them, her arm around David's waist. They looked like the perfect, beautiful, young family. A complete unit. I was just the observer, the photographer on the periphery. I felt a pang of such profound loneliness it was a physical ache. I was an extra in the movie of their lives. After the party, as people were leaving, I went to find David to say goodbye. He was talking with a group of his friends. I waited patiently until he noticed me. Heading off, Mom? He asked. Yes, it was a wonderful party, I said. Leo had a great time. He nodded, his attention already drifting back to his friends. Yeah, it was a success. Thanks for coming, Mom. He gave me a quick, one-armed hug. I'll call you soon. And that was it. I walked to my car alone, the joy of the day drained away, replaced by a hollow feeling. The wooden train set was still on the gift table, forgotten. I left it there. The distance grew after that. My invitations for them to come for dinner were often met with, "We're so busy this month, Mom, but we'll find a time soon." The soon never seemed to arrive. When I did see them, the conversations were different. They were full of terms I didn't understand, career milestones, investment portfolios, vacation plans to places I had only seen on television. I would sit and listen, smiling, but I had nothing to contribute. My world of gardening, book club, and quiet evenings felt small and insignificant compared to theirs. One afternoon, I was looking at photos on my phone. I had a few of Leo, but they were all from months ago. I realized with a start that I hadn't seen him in over a month. I missed him terribly. On an impulse, I decided to surprise them. I baked a batch of David's favorite cookies and drove to their house. It was a beautiful, modern townhouse in a nice development. I rang the doorbell, my heart fluttering with a mix of excitement and nervousness. Chloe opened the door. She looked surprised, and not entirely pleased. "Margaret, we weren't expecting you." I held up the tin of cookies. "I was just in the neighborhood. I thought I'd drop these off. Maybe see Leo for a minute?" I could hear Leo laughing inside. Chloe hesitated. "Now isn't really a good time, actually. He's just about to start his online Spanish lesson, and then we have a session with his child development coach." A 3-year-old with a child development coach. I just blinked. "Oh, I said, my voice small. "I see. I'm sorry to interrupt." Just then, David came to the door. "Mom? What are you doing here?" There was a note of irritation in his voice that cut me deeply. I brought you some cookies," I said, feeling foolish. David sighed. "Mom, you should really call first. We have a very tight schedule." A schedule. For a 3-year-old. I felt like I had broken some unspoken rule. I had committed the sin of spontaneity. Of grandmotherly love. "Of course," I said, handing the tin to Chloe. "I'm sorry. I'll call next time." I turned to leave, my face burning with shame. As I walked back to my car, I heard the door close firmly behind me. It wasn't a loud slam, but it was definitive. It was the sound of me being on the wrong side of the door. The car ride home was a blur of hot, silent tears. That night, I couldn't sleep. I replayed the scene at the door over and over in my head. The surprised looks, The irritation, the talk of schedules and coaches. Was I really such an inconvenience? Had my love become a burden to them? I thought of all the times I had dropped everything for David. When he was sick, when he needed help with a project, when he just needed his mom. I was always there, no schedule required. The one-way street of it all felt like a betrayal. A few days later, I gathered my courage and called David. I tried to keep my voice light. "Hi, honey. I just wanted to apologize for dropping by unannounced the other day." There was a pause on the other end. "It's okay, Mom. It's just, our lives are very different now. We have a system. Chloe likes to keep things organized. He always said Chloe likes or Chloe thinks. It was never we. It was as if her preferences had become the law of the land, and he was merely the enforcer. I understand, I said, even though I didn't. Not really. I was just. I miss you. I miss Leo. My voice cracked a little on his name. David's tone softened slightly. We miss you too, Mom. It's just a busy season. Look, how about we come for lunch on Sunday? A proper visit. Hope, that treacherous thing, bloomed in my chest again. Really? That would be wonderful. I'll make a roast chicken, and your potato dish, and a lemon cake. I sounded too eager, I knew, but I couldn't help it. Sure, Mom, he said, his voice already distracted. That sounds great. We'll see you around 1. I hung up the phone, my spirits lifted. This was it. A chance to reconnect. To show them that I could fit into their busy, organized lives. I would make the perfect lunch. I would be the perfect, low-maintenance mother and grandmother. I would not offer unsolicited advice. I would not talk about the past. I would be interested in their world. Everything would be fine. I truly believed that. I spent the next few days planning the menu, cleaning the house until it sparkled, buying a new toy for Leo. I was setting the stage for a reconciliation, for things to go back to the way they used to be. I had no idea I was actually preparing for the final, heartbreaking scene of our story together. That Sunday arrived, bathed in golden sunlight. The house had never looked cleaner or felt more welcoming. The smell of roasting chicken and lemon cake was a perfume of love, of hope. I had set the table with the blue-flowered china, a symbol of family tradition, of continuity. I looked at the 3 places I had set. David, Chloe, and Leo. My family. I felt a nervous flutter in my stomach, like I was waiting for very important guests. In a way, I was. When the doorbell rang, my heart leaped. I opened the door, and there they were. My son, my daughter-in-law, my grandson. For a moment, everything felt right in the world. Leo's cry of a grandma, it was the balm my soul needed. I held him close, breathing him in. He was getting so big. David's compliment about the house, though distant, was appreciated. We moved to the living room, and I watched Leo play with the toys. I saw David glance around, his eyes taking in the familiar surroundings, but there was no nostalgia in his gaze. It was more like an assessment. Lunch began pleasantly enough. The food was a success. David ate 2 helpings of the potatoes. Chloe complimented the chicken. We made small talk. But I could feel the tension beneath the surface. It was like we were all carefully avoiding the elephant in the room, the unspoken hurt from my unannounced visit, the growing distance, the fact that our worlds were drifting apart. We talked about safe topics. The weather. The new park they were building near their house. Leo's latest words. It was after the lemon cake was served, when the plates were almost clean, that Chloe placed her fork down. That simple, deliberate action sent a chill down my spine. She looked at David, and he gave her that almost imperceptible nod. This was planned. This was the real reason for the visit. The lunch was just the preamble. The main event was about to begin. Mom, David started. His voice was calm, too calm. It was the voice he used when he was about to deliver bad news he had rehearsed. There's something we wanted to talk to you about. I put my own fork down. The sweet taste of lemon cake turned sour in my mouth. I folded my hands in my lap, my knuckles white. I looked at my son, and I saw the little boy who used to confess his minor misdeeds to me with the same serious expression. But this was no minor misdeed. This was something else entirely. We've been thinking, he continued, his eyes fixed on a point just past my shoulder. With Leo getting bigger, and my job being so demanding, we need more space. The word space hung in the air, heavy and ambiguous. My mind raced. Were they adding a room? Moving to a bigger house in the same neighborhood? I clung to that hope. But then Chloe spoke, her voice bright and efficient, cutting through my fragile optimism. We found a wonderful house, she said, as if she was describing a product she'd seen in a catalogue. It's in Oak Ridge. It has a huge backyard for Leo, and the schools there are just fantastic. Oak Ridge. The word landed like a physical blow. I felt the air leave my lungs. Oak Ridge. It wasn't just another neighborhood. It was another world. It was a 2-hour drive, at least. It was a commitment to visit. It was a statement. I wouldn't be a part of their daily lives, or even their weekly lives. I would be a biannual event, a holiday visitor. I struggled to find my voice. Oak Ridge? I managed to whisper. That's quite far away, David. He finally met my eyes, and I saw the conflict in them. I saw the little boy who loved his mom, but I also saw the man who was firmly, resolutely, on his wife's team. I know, Mom. But it's a great opportunity for us. For our family. There it was again. Our family. The words were a wall, and I was on the outside. I was not included in that hour. I was the separate entity, the one they had to move 2 hours away from. A million thoughts rushed through my head. Who would help them if Leo got sick in the night? Who would I call for a quick chat? How would I watch my grandson grow up through blurry photos and occasional video calls? The future I had imagined, of being a present, involved grandmother, of growing old with my son and his family nearby, shattered into 1,000 pieces right there at my kitchen table. I looked at David, really looked at him. I saw the man he had become. A man who prioritized his wife's desires, his son's potential school district, his career trajectory. All of it was reasonable. All of it was what a good husband and father should do. But what about being a good son? Where did that duty lie? In that moment, I realized it was a duty he had quietly relinquished. He had transferred his primary allegiance. I was no longer his immediate family. I was extended family. An optional extra. The silence stretched, becoming unbearable. They were waiting for my reaction. They expected tears, perhaps. Or anger. They were prepared for a scene. But something inside me broke, and instead of shattering, it solidified. A quiet strength, born of a lifetime of facing hardship, rose within me. I would not give them the drama they might be expecting. I would not cry. I would not make this harder for them. I would, as I had always done, accept the pieces of my life and try to put them back together. I forced a smile. It felt brittle on my face, but I held it. Well, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. That sounds, or wonderful. The words tasted like ash, but I said them. I saw the visible relief on both their faces. The tension in the room dissipated. The difficult part was over. For them. I then did what a good mother is supposed to do. I asked the practical questions. How many bedrooms? Is the kitchen updated? What's the asking price? I participated in the conversation about their exciting new future, a future that explicitly excluded me. I nodded and smiled as Chloe described the open-plan living area and the ensuite bathroom. I commented on how great the schools were. I was the picture of supportive motherhood. Inside, I was dying. The rest of the visit was a blur. They stayed for another half an hour, the mood now light and conversational. The heavy news was out, and I had taken it well. I had passed their test. I had proven I wasn't a difficult, clingy mother. I had shown them I could be self-sufficient. I had given them my blessing to leave me behind. When they got up to leave, I hugged Leo tightly, memorizing the feel of his small, warm body. "Bye-bye, Grandma," he said, unaware that he was saying goodbye to so much more than just an afternoon visit. I hugged Chloe. "Congratulations on the new house," I said. She seemed genuinely pleased. "Thanks, Margaret. We'll send you pictures." Then I turned to David. I looked into the eyes of my son, the boy I had raised, the man I was so proud of. I hugged him. He hugged me back, a brief, firm hug. "Thanks for understanding, Mom," he whispered. I just nodded, unable to speak. Understanding was the last thing I felt, but I had accepted it. That was enough for him. I stood at the door and watched them walk to their car. David buckled Leo into his car seat. Chloe got into the passenger side. David got into the driver's seat. He waved at me one last time before backing out of the driveway. I waved back, my hand moving mechanically. I stood there long after their car had disappeared from view, watching the empty street. I closed the door slowly. The silence of the house rushed in to greet me. It was louder than ever before. I walked back into the kitchen. The table was a mess of dirty plates, leftover food, and 3 empty places. The lemon cake, half-eaten, sat in the center. The celebration of a new beginning for them was the monument of an ending for me. I looked at David's plate, at the crumbs of his favorite dessert, and I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, that nothing would ever be the same again. The thread had snapped. The day my son chose his new family over me was not a loud, dramatic day. It was a quiet Sunday, filled with sunshine and the taste of lemon cake, and it was the loneliest day of my life. The days that followed were some of the darkest I have ever known. The initial shock wore off, leaving behind a raw, aching grief. It felt like a death, but without the closure. There was no funeral to attend, no condolences from friends. It was a private, silent mourning for a relationship that was still technically alive, but had fundamentally changed. I wandered through the empty rooms of my house, and every corner held a memory that now felt like a betrayal. The blue-flowered china sat in the sink for 3 days before I had the strength to wash it. I couldn't bring myself to touch it. It represented a family unity that no longer existed. When I finally did wash it, I dried each piece carefully and put it away in the high cabinet, the one I rarely used. I didn't know if I would ever take it out again. I replayed that Sunday lunch conversation in my head 1,000 times. I analyzed every word, every glance, every subtle shift in tone. I wondered what I had done wrong. Had I been too clingy? Had I not given them enough space? Had I said something to offend Chloe? Had I failed as a mother? The weight of self-blame was crushing. I had dedicated my life to my son, and the result of that dedication was him moving 2 hours away to create a new life, a life where I was a minor character. I thought about calling him. I thought about telling him how much he had hurt me. I drafted speeches in my head, full of emotion and accusation. After all I've done for you. I was always there for you. How could you do this to me? But I never made the call. I knew how it would sound. It would sound like guilt-tripping. It would sound like the very clinginess they were trying to escape. It would push him further away. So, I suffered in silence. A week after the lunch, as I had come to think of it, David called. His voice was cheerful. "Hey, Mom. Just wanted to let you know, the inspection on the Oak Ridge house went great. We're moving forward." He talked about mortgage rates and closing dates. I listened, making small, encouraging noises. "That's wonderful, honey," I said, my voice a hollow echo of his enthusiasm. He didn't seem to notice. He was so caught up in the excitement of his new life. My pain was invisible to him. The move happened 2 months later. I offered to help pack, but they had hired movers. "It's all under control, Mom," David said. "Don't worry about a thing." So, on the day they moved, I sat in my silent house, imagining the chaos and activity at their old townhouse. I imagined the truck being loaded with their belongings, with the furniture I had helped David pick out for his first apartment, with Leo's crib, with their life. I was not a part of it. I was a spectator. The first few weeks after they moved were the hardest. The silence in my house was no longer just quiet. It was a presence. It was the sound of absence. My phone, which used to light up with texts from David or photos of Leo, was now mostly silent. The Sunday calls became even more sporadic. When we did talk, the conversations were brief. "How's the new house?" I'd ask. "Great. We're still unpacking. Leo loves his new room." There was never a "when are you coming to see it?" I felt myself sinking into a deep loneliness. I stopped gardening. The flowers wilted. I stopped going to book club. I couldn't concentrate on the stories. My own story was too overwhelming. I would sit for hours in my armchair, staring out the window, watching the world go by without me. I was a ghost in my own life. One afternoon, I found myself looking through old photo albums. I traced the pictures of David as a baby, as a toddler, as a gap-teethed boy, as a gawky teenager. I saw the pictures of us at the beach, on Christmas mornings, in this very living room. The love in those pictures was so tangible, so pure. How had we gone from that to this cold, formal distance? The journey felt impossible, and yet, here we were. It was during one of these melancholy sessions that I found a particular photograph. It was of me and David on his first day of kindergarten. He was clinging to my leg, his little face scrunched up, about to cry. I was kneeling down, talking to him, my hand on his cheek. I remembered that moment vividly. I had said to him, "It's okay to be scared, my love. But you are so brave. And I will be right here waiting for you when you get home." He had looked at me, taken a deep breath, and walked into the classroom. Looking at that photo, something shifted inside me. I saw the mother I used to be. Strong, calm, reassuring. She was a survivor. She had faced widowhood, financial struggle, and the immense challenge of raising a child alone. She had never given up. She had always found a way to put one foot in front of the other. Where was that woman now? Had she disappeared just because her son had moved away? In that moment, I had a profound realization. My identity for so long had been a David's mom. It was my primary role, my greatest source of pride and purpose. But David was a grown man. He had his own life, his own family. By holding on so tightly to the mother I used to be, I was neglecting the woman I still was. I was allowing his choices to define my happiness. I was giving him all the power over my emotional well-being. And that wasn't fair, not to him, and certainly not to me. The grief didn't magically disappear. But it began to transform. It was no longer a sharp, stabbing pain, but a dull, chronic ache that I learned to live with. I started to take small steps back into my own life. I forced myself to water the plants. I deadheaded the wilted flowers, making room for new growth. It felt like a metaphor. I called my friend from book club and apologized for my absence. She was wonderfully understanding. "We've missed you, Margaret," as she said. Her simple words meant the world. I started going for walks in the morning. The fresh air and the rhythm of my steps helped clear my mind. I began to notice things I had been too absorbed in my grief to see, the way the light filtered through the trees, the sound of the birds, the kindness of a neighbor's smile. The world was still turning. Life was still going on. and I was still a part of it. I did not forgive David overnight. Forgiveness is a slow process, not a single event. I had to work through my anger, my hurt, my sense of betrayal. I had to accept that his decision, while painful for me, was not necessarily a malicious one. He was building the life he wanted, just as I had raised him to do. He was being a good husband and father, just as I had taught him to be. The cruel irony was that my success as a mother had resulted in my own loneliness. I began to rebuild my life around my own needs and desires, not around the schedule of my son's family. I took a pottery class at the community centre. My first few bowls were lopsided and clumsy, but I didn't care. It felt good to create something with my own hands. I started volunteering at the local library, reading stories to children during their Saturday story hour. Seeing their eager, innocent faces filled a small part of the void that Leo had left. I was finding new purposes, new threads of connection. I still missed them. There were moments, often in the evening, when the silence would feel oppressive again, and the ache for my son and my grandson would return with a vengeance. But I was learning to sit with that ache. I was learning that I could be lonely, and I could also be strong. I could be sad, and I could also find moments of joy. My life was not over. It was just different. It was a new chapter, one I had to learn to write for myself. Several months had passed since the move to Oak Ridge. The seasons had changed. The vibrant greens of summer had given way to the fiery reds and golds of autumn. My life had found a new, quieter rhythm. The pottery classes, the library volunteering, my book club, my walks, these were the pillars of my new existence. The sharp pain had subsided into a familiar sadness, a part of me now, like an old injury that acts up when the weather changes. One crisp October afternoon, my doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. I put down the book I was reading and went to the door. When I opened it, I was stunned to see David standing there. Alone. He looked tired, and there was a vulnerability in his eyes that I hadn't seen in years. "Mom," he said, his voice soft. "Can I come in?" For a moment, I just stood there, taking him in. My son. Here. On my doorstep. Without his wife, without his son. Just him. "Of course," I said, stepping aside. "Of course, come in." He walked into the living room and sat down on the sofa, his shoulders slumped. He looked around the room, and this time, his gaze seemed different. It wasn't assessing or distant. It was nostalgic. He was seeing the memories, too. "Would you like some tea?" I asked, falling back on the familiar ritual of motherhood. "That would be great, Mom." "Thanks." I went into the kitchen and put the kettle on. My hands were trembling slightly. Why was he here? What had happened? 1,000 worries flitted through my mind. Was he sick? Was something wrong with Leo? With Chloe? I prepared the tea tray, taking out 2 mugs. I didn't use the blue-flowered china. That felt like a step too far. When I brought the tea in, he was still sitting in the same position, staring at his hands. I handed him a mug and sat in my armchair opposite him. We sat in silence for a few moments, the steam from our tea rising between us. "How are you, David?" I asked gently. He let out a long, shaky sigh. He didn't give me the usual, breezy "I'm fine." He looked at me, and his eyes were filled with a profound weariness. "I'm tired, Mom." And then, he started to talk. He talked about the pressure of his new job. About the stress of the move, of the mortgage. He talked about how parenting an energetic 3-year-old was more exhausting than he had ever imagined. He talked about the arguments he and Chloe had been having, small, silly arguments that stemmed from stress and fatigue. He talked about feeling like he was constantly running on a treadmill, trying to keep up with the image of the perfect life they were supposed to be living. I listened. I didn't offer advice. I didn't say "I told you so." I just listened. I let him unburden himself. He talked for a long time, and as he spoke, I saw the little boy again. The little boy who used to come home from school with his problems and pour them out to his mom. He had come home. When he finally finished, the room was quiet again. The afternoon light was fading, casting long shadows across the floor. "I'm sorry, Mom," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm sorry for everything. For the way we told you about the move. For the distance. I've just been so caught up. I didn't realize," he trailed off, but I knew what he meant. He didn't realize how much he had hurt me. He didn't realize how far he had pushed me away. "It's okay, David," I said. And for the first time, I meant it. It wasn't fully okay, but I understood. I saw the pressure he was under. I saw that his decision wasn't a personal rejection of me, but a desperate grasp for what he thought was the perfect life for his own family. He had gotten lost in the process. "I miss this," he said, looking around the room. "I miss the quiet. I miss your lemon cake. I miss just talking to you." He looked at me, and his eyes were pleading. "I'm sorry it took me being this worn out to realize why I've been missing." My heart, which I had thought was permanently hardened, softened. This was not the triumphant reunion I had sometimes fantasized about, where he would beg for my forgiveness. This was real. It was messy. It was him, my son, flawed and tired and human, coming back to me because he needed his mom. And I was still here. "You're always welcome here, David," I said. "This is your home. It will always be your home." He nodded, a single tear tracing a path down his cheek. He quickly wiped it away. We finished our tea, and the conversation turned to lighter things. We talked about my pottery class. He laughed when I described my lopsided bowls. He seemed genuinely interested. It was the first real, two-sided conversation we had had in years. He stayed for a simple dinner of soup and bread. It wasn't a fancy roast chicken lunch. It was just food. But it felt more meaningful than any elaborate meal I had ever prepared for them. He helped me with the dishes, just like he used to when he was a boy. Standing side by side at the sink, the years of distance seemed to melt away, if only for a little while. When it was time for him to leave, he hugged me at the door. It was a real hug, long and tight. The kind of hug that says I'm sorry and I love you and I've missed you all at once. "I'll call you soon, Mom," he said. "And we'd really like you to come see the new house. Maybe for Leo's birthday next month." It was an invitation. A real one. Not an obligation, but a genuine desire for me to be a part of their world, even if it was 2 hours away. "I would love that," I said, and I meant it. After he drove away, I closed the door. The house was silent again, but the silence felt different this time. It wasn't the heavy silence of absence. It was a peaceful silence. A hopeful silence. I know that everything is not magically fixed. The move to Oak Ridge is still a fact. Our relationship has been altered forever. It will never again be just the two of us against the world. It is more complicated now. There are new people, new priorities, new distances to navigate. There will be good visits and awkward visits. There will be times I feel included and times I feel on the outside. That is the nature of life. But the thread, the one I thought had snapped that fateful Sunday, wasn't completely broken. It was frayed, stretched thin, but it was still there. And with care, with patience, with forgiveness, it could be woven back together, stronger in its mended places. The lesson I have learned through all of this is a simple one, but it was a hard one. A mother's love is unconditional, but a mother's life cannot be. Our children are lent to us for a little while. We pour all our love, our wisdom, our strength into them, with the hope that they will grow into independent, kind, and happy adults. And when they do, when they fly from the nest to build their own, our job is not to cling to the empty nest, mourning what was. Our job is to learn to fly again ourselves. My purpose is no longer just to be David's mom. It is to be Margaret. The potter, the volunteer, the friend, the reader, the gardener. The woman who survived heartbreak and found a new way to live. The woman who learned that her strength was her own, not dependent on anyone else. I look at the photograph of us on his first day of school, which I now keep on my mantelpiece. I see the brave little boy and the strong, reassuring mother. We are both still here. We are just older, a little weathered, a little wiser. The story isn't over. It's just taken a turn I didn't expect. And I am finally learning to be at peace with that, one piece at a time. If you enjoyed the story, please subscribe, like, and let me know your thoughts in the comments.